Hi everyone, my name is Felicia Bacon. I'm a student at Launch School, and today I have a fellow Launch School student with me. Her name is Katarina Rosiak, and we're just going to be asking her questions and learning about her journey to and through Launch School. So, hi Katarina, how are you doing?
Hi, thank you for having me. It's so much fun already.
Thanks. I'm so excited because I've seen Katarina around Launch School a lot with Spot and doing all these events and stuff, and she's just really involved with Launch School, and I'm so excited to be sitting here talking with her today. And hopefully you guys will enjoy hearing her story. So I guess we can just go into the questions if you're okay with that.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Okay, so my first question is, where are you from and what were you doing before Launch School?
So I'm originally from Poland, but about 12 years ago, I moved to Sweden and lived in a couple of different places since then, such as Laos and Spain. And before I discovered Launch School, I did a couple of things. I ran a small grocery shops with my family, and then I graduated from university, and then I worked in education for about 10 years. I worked in marketing and events, and then finally, just before Launch School, I worked in tourism, specifically in ecotourism, eco and adventure tourism. So that's my story, my background.
Wow, that's a lot of different things. So like none of that had to do with software engineering.
Not really. I mean, a little bit. I think my last job maybe not really had too much to do with it, but we did build our websites and we did have some databases and stuff. So this is where my interest for software engineering kind of came to be, and the idea grew up. I got really interested. I mean, like, it was a great job and I was really passionate about it because it was mainly outside of office, and it was like very interesting activities like trying different tours, like trying different activities like zip line or kayaking or like traveling. So this was all great, but I also found myself really drawn into like very much office work and like computer and technical oriented, like, you know, databases and like building websites and like implementing different systems and like you know, accounting. That was the first time I like learned more about it, and I found all of that very, very interesting. And I think, you know, when COVID came, that was like kind of a trigger that helped me to kind of decide that now is the time to do something else. Because with COVID, I lived in Laos at that time. I could not continue working in tourism. I knew that I don't want to do it for the rest of my life, but I didn't know at some point what I wanted to do. And I think it was just something that accelerated me choosing the way to software engineering.
That makes sense. You kind of have to adapt like with the times and what's going on, you know, around you. And if you're forced to stop working where you were working before, like working with people, being out in public a lot, you have to find something else that you can do at home. So I guess that was kind of a natural kind of transition for you.
Yeah, it was. I really wanted to work with some field where I have to learn a lot, because I really, really like learning new things all the time. And I think, as you can say from my background, I did many, many different things. And it's because I really, really like learning. And education was because of, you know, my background in education was because of that. I really, really enjoy learning new things and teaching other people too. So I think software engineering, I don't think there's better thing you can do to learn all the time, better job field than going into software engineering.
Yeah.
You have to learn all the time.
All the time, yeah. And there's so much opportunity too to learn something and then turn around and go teach it to somebody else. Like there's a lot of that too.
Absolutely. And that part I really, really like and enjoy.
That's awesome. So how did you find Launch School then?
Yeah, so once I decided I want to go into tech, I didn't really know specifically what I want to do yet. I didn't know much information about it, so I asked many friends about opinions, and data science and machine learning was really hot topic. And I thought first that I will jump into that, which apparently didn't really end up what I was thinking. If you apparently cannot be a total beginner to do machine learning, so you really need to have some kind of background to do that. But one of my friends who is a software engineer recommended going into web development. He said it's much easier to start with, so that's what I decided on. And I've searched a lot for good resources. Like, I think for the first 3 months, I tried many different, and I wasn't really satisfied with any of them, because I didn't find they were preparing me to be a software engineer on the professional level. It was more like fun projects to do, or just to learn how to code, anything about JavaScript. But it didn't really prepare you to be a professional in the field. So I did some code academy, and I started even a boot camp, which was not very good one. But fortunately, I didn't have to pay for like $10,000 for the whole one, but you could do it just like paying about $200 a month, which was affordable. But it just didn't suit me. And then someone wrote on one of the groups, I think Facebook groups I was following. At that time, I was following anything there were about like how to become a programmer. So someone was recommending that you can do launch school if you want to, if you already are a web developer, but you want to learn more deeply. That was like what someone said. And I was like, okay, I think I've checked all boot camps and school there is there, but I've never heard about this one. So I just like followed the link, and I started reading about the whole didactic approach and the pedagogy, and then I went to see the projects. And I think this is what was most impressive to me. To see the level of capstone projects was amazing, because you could compare it with what other people do after boot camps, right? 3 months boot camp comparing to capstone project, which I couldn't, at that time, I couldn't understand what they even were about, and the level of communication skills that graduate had was very impressive to me. And I was looking at it, and I already knew that this is what I would like to do. This is how I would like to be when I finish studying and starting to searching for a job. So, and obviously reading about the whole curriculum and the pedagogy that Launch School is using was like, it was just like, I got hooked up straight away, because I'm like I have an educational background. I'm a teacher, so I'm a very it's very important to me to have materials that are, so well built and so systematic and structured in a way that that the concepts build upon each other. So I know when I'm studying, whatever it is, it's just a building block for what more advanced concepts that we're going to learn in the future. And that is something that I don't think most of boot camps and other schools that I looked at have. Right. And I think that the main difference, I think, between Launch School and other boot camps is that Launch School is really focusing on like actually being school, I could say. So while other boot camps is just a product that aiming to bringing a profit. And that is a huge difference, because you will never hear from Launch School, from people that work at Launch School that Launch School is aiming to get like more profit or like get more people to study there. So I think Chris said that he will even limit amount of people that study at Launch School, which is like totally not what other boot camps are doing. It's more focusing on the on the education and actually teaching you the fundamentals
Mm-hmm.
and preparing you for this role. So I think that was what made me like hook up with life school.
That's awesome. That's crazy. I hear like so many similar stories, and I have one too. I think you heard my story before I found law school. I was doing free code camp. I was reading a bunch of random books, like watching Microsoft videos, like anything I could get my hands on to learn how to code. And then once I started doing that for a few weeks, I just realized that I couldn't put together a single project because I didn't have a structured curriculum. I didn't have like a solid mental model of any single concept. And that really frustrated me. And that's when I realized too, oh, I need to find a school. But boot camps weren't going to cut it because they're really expensive. And two, I didn't want to come out of a boot camp, like you said, like 3 months later, 6 months later, and be in that same position of not really knowing what I'm doing. And so that's when I found launch school too. And it's crazy because I didn't know about it. I never heard of it either. I hear that a lot also. But I think it's done purposely. Yeah, so that's what I really liked about launch school. And I noticed about launch school because they weren't really marketing like other boot camps and stuff, where they weren't trying to focus like how many graduates can I push out? How much money can we make? They were really focused on the small amount of people they had and making sure they knew the fundamentals so that when they went out into the real world, they were professional software engineers that knew what they were doing, that can have an interview question or a project and can master material or come up with a solution with a really good working algorithm. And they put like so much effort into thinking about a problem and not just like trying to get to a solution, but the whole problem itself. Like there's so much that goes into trying to be a good software engineer. So that is a really good thing about launch school that I hear a lot from people.
The part about communication, which I think obviously no bootcamp is focusing about communication because you simply don't have time during 3 months. How much can you learn? But at launch school, we consistently practice talking about complicated technical concepts, so that when you get to capstone, like you can talk like a professionals. Right? It takes time. It's not something you can learn during 1 or 2 months, really. Yeah. It's taking, I can even think about like how much time it took me to be able to go to an interview, our assessment, and talk about explaining the code that I'm writing in professional and confident way, and not like, coming up with some words that doesn't mean anything, So it takes practice, and honestly, selling people that have no technical background or no experience that you can learn to be a professional software developer in 3 months is just a lie. I don't think anyone can actually be a professional in 3 months. You maybe can learn some framework quite okay, and then maybe you can get a job that is, a very low level, but I don't think you can get a really good job or like even interesting job after 3 months, because I know how long it took me to even start thinking like a software engineer. It takes a while, and I'm still not done with that, but it's if you don't have any experience or technical background, it will take you several months to even start understanding simple engineering concepts or even coding concepts. It took me a month to understand what for loop is doing. Honestly, like I just couldn't get it. But with every concept you learn, it's just becoming easier and easier. And at some point, it just like clicked, and you're starting to understand it and starting to thinking this way, a logical way of thinking, which is not something you are born with. It's not something that you learn much at school. It's something you have to develop with time, and you cannot do it in 3 months. It's just impossible.
No, yeah, like you said, communication interview aspect. Now that I think about it, I don't remember any course or school that I looked at ever talking about interviewing, ever talking about how to write a solution to a problem or even an algorithm and being able to talk about it, which is just a skill I've never had. Talking in front of people was just something that made me just so nervous. I just couldn't do it. And that was something I had to face coming into launch school. And I knew that it was going to be a skill that I had to constantly work at. And I remember, like, you just made a little joke about the for loop thing. I remember going through Ruby, and for some reason, I was so afraid of while loops. Like, I don't know why. I can get everything else, but I stayed away from while loops.
Dangerous. Is there dangerous if you write them wrong? They will like hang in your browser or like the environment you're working at. It's like
something's wrong with me. Like, I don't know why I'm so afraid of while loops.
As much.
Yeah, like it was just for whatever reason, no matter how much I read about and used while loops, there was just something in my head that just couldn't get it. And it wasn't until I started JavaScript maybe 2 years later, so just a few months ago, I started using while loops in JavaScript. I was like light bulbs went off in my head. I'm like, oh, I completely understand. There's nothing to be afraid of. Like, it's so simple. But it took me years to get comfortable with this concept. And that going back to what you're saying, like 3 months, 6 months, there's no way you could be a professional anything in that amount of time. And so that's what I really liked about launch school. Like, they were very upfront about what they were doing, about their philosophy for learning, and about how long it would take you to do to get through it. You know, you have to change your mindset from thinking, oh, I will be done with this in, the months time frame, to this could probably take me years. And at first I was like, oh, I don't want to be doing this for 2-3 years. Like, I just want to get my job and get out. But then I had to really sit and think, like, what do I really want? If I was really okay with doing this for a few months and getting a job, I would just stick to what I'm doing, and do all those resources. But I'm here for a reason. I want to go to school and really become a professional. And, that's why I did launch school. And I think that's a lot of people why they choose it. So.
Yeah, I totally agree. And it took me a while too. I think I haven't finished yet, but I'm on the last course. So I think I will be done sometime in January. But so it took me about 1.5 years so far. And I think you can do it faster than that. I know people that done it in like 4 months, which are like super smart.
Wow.
But like, not saying names, but of course, if you are dedicated and if you have this, but you have to have the base, which is a very well-structured program that gives you a bunch of exercises. I'm like so sick of exercises in a lunch. Like, seriously, they are like exercises for everything, and they are okay, they're not fun, but when you're done with them, you actually see the difference. Mm-hmm. I think that the most important part in this program are the exercises, because you just keep doing something over and over and over again. So you end up like, you have to be able to do it in the end. Like, there's no way you will be able to finish all those exercises and not being able to like completely like, doing it, right? To write this piece of code this way, or like make a query to database. So I think exercises is the key. And if you have the structured program that you wake up every single day, you know exactly what you're going to do. And you know that if you do all of that, you will be professional in the end. Mm-hmm. And of course, there are many people that were able to do it much, much faster than in 1.5 years. Mm-hmm. But again, at launch school, we are focusing on fundamentals. We are not learning frameworks like React, which I don't think you can really understand if you don't have the fundamentals.
Right.
Like, you really need to understand what server is and what is a request and response cycle. And like, you need to understand the basics to be able to work with that and understand what is happening, because then you will end up having a bug and you will have no idea what it comes from. And that's not a situation you want to be as a developer.
Yeah. I never wanted to be in that situation where I was faced with a concept or a question and I had no idea what they were talking about. I had never seen it, or like learning frameworks and stuff. Like, how could I go and learn a framework or learn, I don't know, Rails or React or something and not know the language that it comes from? How do I not know Ruby, or how do I not know JavaScript? Like, that to me just makes sense. That seems like the most logical step that you would start with. And learning all those, concepts, the difficult ones like scope and stuff like that. Like, to me, that was the hardest part, was learning scope. And I never really learned about scope before I came to launch school. And I said, if this is so important, why haven't I heard about it? Why haven't I seen it anywhere else before launch school? If it's so important, like they say it is, things like that.
Yeah, when I started launch school and did prep, it was a very interesting experience to me, because I was at that point, I think I finished Code Academy and I finished some other courses of launch school. I even read a book and like did some simple project / tic-tac-toe game. And I was like, yeah, I mean, like I studied JavaScript for 2 months. I already know JavaScript. I would probably just fly through this curriculum. And then you do the prep, and then there are like concepts that you've never heard about, like scope or variables as pointers, and you just like, that's the moment where I really, really understood that I know nothing. You go there and you have this confidence that I guess most of developers have after finishing bootcamp or like any course. They believe they know about JavaScript or about the language. They believe they know they are on the professional level, because how could you know that you are not on the right level? So what is the point if you have to, after bootcamp, study for the next year to even be able to be considered for the job in the field, right? So it apparently 3 months is not enough at that point, right?
It should be longer.
2 months to learn JavaScript was not enough. And it sounds funny right now, but like I really thought that I know JavaScript well before I started not even knowing talking about going any deeper in this subject. So like prep was, okay, yeah. I don't know nothing. Let's just like slow down and start really studying.
Yeah, that's why I love the prep course. So when you started launch school, they had the JavaScript track when you signed up. I remember when I started, it was only the Ruby track. So you had to decide between Ruby and JavaScript. So why did you choose the JavaScript track?
Yeah, so I'm based in Europe, and I did some research previously about the job market, and like the backend JavaScript is what is mostly required for backend positions in the job market I was searching for. And Ruby was just not very popular in Europe. So I was very interested in the backend part of JavaScript. And I also thought, if at some point I decide to do another language, then I can always go back and just do part of the Ruby track for the backend, right? And I will have the same, or probably what those people that do Ruby track has. But maybe I decide to do another language, like Python. At some point I studied Python, not too deeply, but like at least I could write some scripts and like simple programs. But I could choose. I feel like the launch school giving me the fundamentals that I can learn any language I want right now. And it's just a language. It doesn't really matter if it's JavaScript or if it's Ruby or it's Python or whatever it is. Obviously, I would very much appreciate to have maybe a backend part with Python, just because I really enjoy having this prepared by launch school program to learn something. But I feel confident I could do it by myself as well right now. So
that's awesome. That's how I feel too. I mean, I didn't have a choice when I started. I had to do Ruby, but like if I had to do Ruby again, the Ruby track, I would totally do it again. Like I I feel that the time frame aspect is a fair trade-off. Yes, it takes longer to learn Ruby, but in my opinion, I want to know as much as I can, and I want to walk away saying, I know 2 languages to mastery, and I kind of do wish, like, if I had to learn any other languages, I kind of wish I could learn like the launch school way, like to depth and to mastery, because I love it so much and there's so much to learn. But that's a good reason why you choose the JavaScript track. I know I think a lot of people think Ruby is kind of maybe unpopular or not as used as much, or if they learn Ruby, it's because they want to learn Rails. So, I mean, I'm not sure how I would use Ruby in the future, but I still think it's a good experience because learning Ruby gave me the confidence, like you said, to want to learn JavaScript, because I thought, oh, I know a whole programming language. And before this, I didn't know really anything. And so, and not just like fundamentals, like I know object-oriented programming too. And so with that, I'm like, oh, I can go into JavaScript. Like it's going to be difficult and it's going to be really confusing, but I have the confidence to know that I will be able to master this language too. And when I leave launch school, I can go and learn whatever I want to learn for the job. So I just think that's really awesome. Just having the basics and fundamentals is so important for any language, really, that you start. It doesn't really matter where you start. Just as long as you have the fundamentals. Like in Ruby, I mean, you learn arrays and you learn variables. I didn't have to relearn that in JavaScript. I already knew what variables were. I already knew what arrays were. So it's like there's just some things that are very similar that I don't have to relearn again or learn for the first time. It's just, the nuances and specifics of that language that you have to pick up. It is really interesting to see a whole different, completely different way of doing things. That is so interesting to me. And I haven't even gotten to the next course, like the one you're in with, what is it called? The DOM and like asynchronous JavaScript. Yeah, with the browser, like I haven't even gotten there yet. So like there's a whole world of knowledge with JavaScript I haven't even seen yet. I'm so excited.
And it's super interesting because that's the course when everything comes together and you start understanding like this whole, whatever you did previously to this course, it will come handy in the last course and you will be like, oh, that's why we did it.
Okay.
The last course I think is the most important of them all, to like understand the whole picture finally. And like there's also a lot of projects to do. So like you will end up knowing how to code, I guess, quite well after all of that.
Oh, that's so good to hear. What was the hardest part about going through launch school?
The hardest? Assessments, no doubt. 100% assessments. It was very, very hard. And I don't think I can think about any other situation in my whole life when I cared so much about getting a good grade. It was insane. Not even in my like when I was at school or at university, I cared so much to get this A+ at the end. But I think assessments are very challenging, demanding. Well, they are doable if you study, but I think they are it's a needed component because they motivate you to put everything you have into like making sure that you 100% understand and are able to apply the knowledge you've learned, which should not necessarily have in like even universities or school. Usually when you get an okay grade, you still go further, you pass, right? But at launch school you have to get at least B+ to be able to pass, which is high grade and it's very good grade in a normal environment. And I remember my first assessment interview where I got A- and I was so upset that I didn't get A+ because I put so much effort. And my boyfriend was like, well, I don't understand why you are so upset. You get A. It's a very good grade. And I'm like, no, because you have to get B plus to pass. So I almost didn't pass, you know. And you know, it was like so funny. Like I wouldn't do it right now anymore. I don't get so upset if I get A minus and not my, you know, A plus or A. But it does require from you, you know, to put quite a lot of effort to actually get a grade like that, and it puts on you quite a bit of pressure as well, which is good because, you know, like interviews, we're going to be even more stressed on the job interviews, right? And I think that's what something that prepares you really well to this situation when you are there in the interviewer, which you don't know, and you are just applying for a dream job, right? And we are going to be very used to that feeling. Mm-hmm. I cannot imagine how I would be able to pass a coding interview without all those hours preparing for the interviews. So definitely it was the hardest, I think, but it was the most rewarding. And I think the feeling you get after you pass it, and after you get a good grade, and after you get this really, really deep understanding, which I'm sure I wouldn't get if there would be no assessments. I would just fly through some of the concepts that maybe are not too interesting, or, you know, but, you know, Learn School telling you like, this is something you need to know, this is important, you have to master it before moving on. And it's true, because if you wouldn't master it, you'd probably not be able to do those more advanced concepts that we're doing in the last course. Mm-hmm. So it's totally understandable, but it's hard.
Yeah, I'd agree. That is the hardest part. But also, I think one of the very best parts of Launch School, I don't know of any other educational school or system that really, really forces you to be this good at something before you can move on. I've never been forced to master something. And if I wasn't being forced by Launch School, like you said, I'd probably just, you know, blow through it and, oh, well, move on to the next thing. But it forces you to look at yourself and say, I am capable of mastering this. I am capable of meeting this very, very high standard that's being put on me. And if Launch School thinks I can do it, then I can, you know, work hard and put in the effort to do it also. And that rewarding feeling after, you know, spending weeks and months working to prepare for an assessment, you know, finally taking it and then seeing that you've passed, even with an A minus or an A, like it's not an A plus, but it's like you get to walk away with that feeling like I've mastered this, like I can move on. Like that was so hard for me to do. And now I know that I'm very, very good at this. Like that is such a good feeling. And I'm really grateful for that chance. Like I've never given myself that chance to, you know, be this good at something, to know a subject so well. So I'm on board. Like they're the hardest part, but I think that's one of the best parts. It is not something that takes just a few days. Like these assessments are hard. They're very difficult, and they're not meant to be like on purpose. Like they're not trying to torture us. Even if it feels like it sometimes. like they're difficult, but they're difficult for a reason. You know, we kind of have to show up and take it upon ourselves and be responsible for our education and our knowledge.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, who knows, you might actually have a job interviewer who wants to torture you a bit, so you'll be prepared for that very, very well.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Like just the practice, how much practice it takes. It's crazy how much, like for me, everyone probably knows this story by now, as I talk about it all the time, terrified of interviews. Even now, like I don't know how many interviews I've done. I'm still just absolutely terrified of them. But I've practiced them so much that I could sit in front of anyone right now and just code and do it. So it's something that you have to practice. You have to face those fears, those things that you know you're not good at. You have to see that every day. And you just have to say, okay, I'm going to just practice and do this every single day, and I will get better. And that's it. Like there's really nothing to it. So, yeah.
Yeah, and on that note, also, what I found in many courses that I did before lunch school is that they underestimate the power of practice. Because you really have to do a lot of exercises to master a topic. And often you just get one exercise, or and often when people learn to code, they do projects quite a lot, and projects are great. I'm not saying they are not. But when you do projects, you don't practice or over practice what you are bad at. You maybe spend a little time of that, and then you spend more time on things that you find enjoyable, which is like, it's not a very efficient way. So if you're thinking about how people are learning to play piano, right? How professionals are learning to play piano or dance ballet, they are not performing all the time. What they're doing is they practice over and over the same motion or the same sound until they perfect it, and only then they move to the next part. And this is something you don't get it at boot camps, and you don't really get it at any other courses. At lunch school, you really have to do this motion over and over again until you get sick of it, right? But then at the end, you are able to do it in your dreams, right? And only then you're able to move to very advanced concept that building this abstraction upon it. Like, you would not be able to do it very professionally if you don't have this fundamentals practiced over and over again. I think that's what lunch school is really good at, and that's what I appreciated a lot.
Yeah, me too. And you'll see it going through the course. It's one thing to read something, but it's another thing to actually like speak it, to code it, to see other people's code and ask them questions about it and see other people's way of doing things. It's a very interactive, almost physical way of doing it. So it's kind of like learning a spoken language. No one just reads a language and that's it. They speak it too. They type it, they write it. It's very physical.
They feel it and they think in the language.
Yeah, and that's just crazy when you said dream about it, because to me, when I'm practicing for an assessment, that's the point I know where I'm ready. When I've been practicing for hours every single day for weeks or months on end, and I'm asleep and I'm actually dreaming of solving problems. And in my dreams, I know what's going on. And I'm like, okay, maybe that's the point where I need to take this test and then take a break, because it's too much. And I probably know this by now. So it's crazy how much repetition it takes. But I mean, yeah, like what you said earlier with piano and ballet and any other thing that you see these people, they're masters of their craft. There's a lot of people out there who've mastered what they do. Why should this field be any different?
Yeah, I agree. And also, like, nowadays, it's so often you hear about all those techniques to learn anything you want in 20 hours or less. Or to master anything you want in 20 hours or less. And sure, there are just like a bunch of techniques that will help you to achieve a very, very certain goal. So you maybe will be able to play on the piano this certain song really well, but can you actually read notes, and can you play any other song out there? You probably cannot, right? Because you've kind of tricked your way through it, and which I think it's in certain situations, maybe if you want to impress a girlfriend or something like that, that works. Like, you want to learn how to sing a song, just one song for your girlfriend, that works, right? But in terms, if you're preparing to be a professional, there's just no way you can trick your way with a bunch of techniques. You have to be able to understand what you are doing, right? You have to have those fundamentals. Otherwise, you will end up in the situation when you are in the workplace and you've learned React so well, right? And you are there, you are so proud of yourself. And then your boss comes to you and saying, you know what, we're not going to use React anymore. We are just going to Vue. And you're like, I just spent 3 months on that, learning React. I don't want to learn a new framework. Yeah, but that's what's going to happen. You're going to need to learn a lot of new things all the time. And it will just take you so much time if you don't have fundamentals. So that's why I think it's crucial.
That's a good point. Yeah. Like learning the fundamentals. Once you have that down, you can pick up other things quickly. It's not as difficult as saying, oh, I just know one framework or I know a little bit about something, and then you're forced to learn other things and you don't have that foundation, or you don't have that general sense, like what's a good word, like a context of everything else around it. If you're missing that, it's hard to go to other things and learn those things too. You're just learning bits and pieces of it, and at no point can you put it all together.
Yeah. Agree.
Okay, so what was your favorite part of going through launch school?
I think the favorite part was definitely the community. Launch school has, I think, one of the most motivated, smart, engaged, and dedicated people I've ever met. And when I was studying at my university, I also worked at the same time. So I didn't really have this, college feeling that people have when they go to university. So I think it's kind of supplementing it a little bit, and I engage in the community quite a bit. So I met so many amazing people, and I know there are people that just fly through curriculum and they don't engage much in the community. And I think if you are one of them, you just miss so much. Because you have the amazing opportunity here to meet other people, like-minded people that have similar interests to you, or totally different interests as well, but are interesting to talk with. Might be your future colleagues as well. You don't know that, and you have so many things to talk about them, and you can share your experience and why going through launch school with. And so I think there's this saying that I think is very much describing the feeling I get at launch school, and it says something like, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And I think that's exactly what's happening at launch school. Like, you can go really fast if you don't engage in the community. It's probably faster. And if that's what is important to you, maybe you are time restricted, then sure, just go ahead and do that because you maybe don't have a choice. But if you have this extra time, just, there are so many opportunities at launch school to engage. There is a sport community. There's so many group of interests about music. There's social networks. There's so many different places, or like general channel, just to go from time to time and maybe reach to other people. There's Women Who Code group as well. So I think there's so many different options, and you don't have to meet in a big group. You can just reach to one person and find this one friend you will go through the whole curriculum with. And I had this experience. I had a friend that we studied quite a lot together, almost every day, several hours. She just finished capstone right now, so I'm a little bit behind, but I was so proud of her. Hello, Rana. That's me. So I mean, and like, I met so many people that I'm sure I'm going to keep in touch after launch school. And in now when I was traveling, I met Corey, who lives in Poland. So we were able to actually meet live. And Teresa also visited me in Spain, and I'm sure we're going to stay in touch for much longer than the school is going. So I definitely recommend just engaging in the launch school community, because it's worth it.
That is so true. I was just thinking the other day, I don't think I would have made it this far through launch school if it were not for the people in this community, if it were not for the ladies at the Women Who Code group who like really encouraged me, especially after my first Ruby 109 interview, because that was the first time that I felt like a failure in launch school, and I took it so hard because I had come from a different career field. I didn't know what I was doing. And I thought, well, gosh, I'm 25. You know, this is a whole new career field for me. And if I fail this, like what's left for me? What am I going to do with my life? And so I took it really hard. I came this close to quitting. And I remember studying with Mandy and Mandy Chang, I think that's her last name. And she gave me a problem and I was just having such a hard time with it. And I remember actually like crying in that study session. I just completely broke down and I just thought, man, I can't do this. Like I can't, there's no way I'm gonna be as good as all these other people. And she sat with me and she really like encouraged me and talked with me and made me feel, just better, like I could do it. Yeah, I just kept solving problems and kept doing it. And eventually I did pass the assessment. And I just thought, wow, I probably would have quit if it weren't for her and just all these other students. And just continuously throughout my launch school journey, I saw that all the time with study sessions and just talking and reaching out to random people out of nowhere and just becoming friends. And now with the spot, which is the next question I was going to ask you, just there's so much opportunity, like you said, to be a part and be involved with the community and putting yourself out there and making these friends. And I really love that quote that you said because I'm pretty shy and introverted. So I always just kind of wanted to go, the fast route, just be alone, let me do my own thing. But then I realized like I wasn't getting a lot out of it. Yeah, it's a really good thing to be a part of. And it's something that you have to utilize. I think in any, educational system, if you have the chance to make friends and talk about these things that you have in common or things you know in common. And it's not like it's all serious all the time. It's not like, oh, we're coding and that's all we do, all we ever talk about. It is fun. There's book clubs and there's music clubs and we had a food chat. Like there's all these different things. So, oh, we have that pet channel where people are like sharing pet pictures.
That's the best thing on that. I should go back to my previous question when you asked about what's the best part in launch school. That's the pet channel, it's like absolutely. It's like every time I'm sad or like need some motivation, I just go there and I look at, dogs and puppies and I feel so much better straight away. It's like you look for motivation or like feeling better, you just go there and everything is better.
Yeah, like that is so awesome. And you wouldn't think, but someone had that idea. And that's another thing too, I wanted to bring up, just launch school, I guess, creating that type of environment for people that allows them to want to come out and have ideas and share it. Like this, I'm not sure of her name, but she created the pet channel and the spot grew to be what it was now. So people are allowed to thrive and grow in this type of environment that launch school is. And I just think that's so amazing for being in an online school. It almost doesn't feel like it's just an online school. It feels like it's such a huge part of your life. So yeah, I think that's the best part. Probably my favorite part too. So I agree. Yeah. I know you were a lead for the spot group and then eventually a mod for the spot group. So I just wanted to ask, like, how important was that position for you? Like, how was it beneficial for you as a student going through launch school?
Oh, that's, I think it was super, super important and super beneficial. I could not be more thankful for this opportunity because it's just allowed me to meet even more great people and doing so many amazing projects and practicing to doing it online. Like the whole organization part, managing part. I've never had such an experience of online with online environment as I had here, and I think it's very beneficial because there is huge chance we're going to work in at least hybrid environment in the future. So you need to be able to be productive and be good in communication online as well. And it's not easy because you maybe don't necessarily see a body language, which is important part of communication. Or, that sometimes there's a language barrier. Sometimes there is, connection barrier, right? You don't really hear very well. Sometimes it's you know, you don't get the same energy online as you get when you sit with a bunch of people at the same room. But you learn to do it when you are in an organization such as Spot, when you have to get together a group of people and then organize yourself in order to, you know, perform some task or organize a project or event, which we did quite a lot when I was there. I think that was my most enjoyable part of being Spot Mod, to just doing fun, mostly educational projects. And obviously you meet so many people because you have to talk with leads, and you know, you have to learn to cooperate with other mods, which was a great communication experience to me, which I don't think I would have otherwise, because maybe previously you meet with 1 or 2 person for a study session, or maybe you have one friend you study with, but here we had to kind of put together a plan, you know, doing organizing and then, you know, advertising event that we had, and making sure that everybody's doing you know, what they're supposed to do, and like that you have to communicate with each other as well. So I think it was very beneficial. And each mod, so I was a mod since March, so it's a few months. Right now is December, so it's quite a lot of time, and a big part of my studying at launch school. And I worked with several mods during this time, and each one of them was very different. With each one I had to find another way of communicating. And even previously, when we started with having a group of 3 mods, which was another challenge and totally different dynamic, to find a way to communicate and organizing, and I think was very beneficial, interesting as well.
That's awesome. I remember I did the what was it called, escape room Mars mission.
Yes.
That was one of the most fun things I have ever done at law school. I had so much fun. I loved it. And I was paired with 2 people who were on the JavaScript track, and I had just started learning JavaScript. Like, I wasn't really that familiar with it. But we just came together and was chatting. We're like, okay, we're a team, and we just went for it. We were solving problems, and it was insane how seamless we all were. We just kind of were like attacking different parts of the problem. We kind of just knew what was going on, and it was so fun, like going around the map and finding clues. And I was like, wow, this is amazing that a few people put this whole thing together. I was so amazed at how creative and complex everything was, and the challenges too. It was just so amazing and so fun. And that is one of my, I guess, best memories at launch school, was doing those coding events. Yeah, it was just so awesome. I was like, wow, you know, I hope one day. Yeah.
It took a while to organize this one, and we did it with Aina, and she's, by the way, in Japan, so her time zone to cooperating with me in Europe. And at that point was Imon in Europe as well, and Marcos was in US, and finding the right time to kind of facilitate it. And she could wake up like at 3 a.m. at night. I don't know how she's doing that, but I think it was the biggest event we did, and the one that took the most of effort and time. But we just had to do it. We came up with the idea with Aina at some point. We were, I think, cooperating with some project in Python or something like that, and we came up with this idea, and we did it on Garretown, and we just kind of decided we have to do it. You know, maybe we will never ever have an opportunity to do it ever again, and let's see how it goes. And it worked, and it worked quite well. Like, there were no bigger issues during the whole game, which we expected there would be a lot, but there were not many. So that was actually amazing that we, with so many people in the different places in the world, could still put something like that together and not run into any major problems. So I really appreciate the team we had there was top level.
That's awesome. That's amazing. That makes me wish like, oh, I can't wait to, get onto the work field and get to work with a team of people on something that we're passionate about. Like that is so exciting. And so awesome too to have that kind of experience, in your education, like going through launch school. Like not a lot of people can say they've done that. So that's a really cool thing. So how did you stay motivated through launch school? I know you said that you've been doing this for a year and a half. To some people, I guess that's not a long time. But to some people, it seems like forever. It feels like forever. So how did you stay motivated through all that?
I think it's not about motivation at all.
Really?
I mean, motivation can only take you so far. It's about consistency, building habits, and having this, waking up every single day and just doing it, doing your job, even if you feel no motivation. Because if you rely on motivation, that will run out of very quickly.
Yeah.
It's just not going to sustain for that amount of time. What you need to have those, habits that's what I'm doing. It's just, like brushing your teeth or, going to sleep. It's not something you have to be motivated to do, right? You don't have to be motivated to go and take a shower, right? It's just something you're doing automatically, right? And I think if you want to persist during that long amount of time, doing things that sometimes are very hard and very demanding and sometimes very boring too, right? So if you don't have motivation, what do? Right? Do you need to have like outside of source of motivation? That's not going to sustain for very long. So instead, I think it's better to just like build this consistent habit that, okay, I wake up every day, I maybe go for a walk and I eat my breakfast, and then I sit and work for a certain amount of hours, and then I maybe go and exercise, and then I go back to bed. And sure, your life is not going to be very interesting for this amount of time. Like, I didn't do as much socially during this time. Obviously, there was pandemic as well, which helped a lot to stay motivated.
Yeah.
I didn't really go out and hang out with friends anyway. I think being dedicated and having this habit of doing it no matter what, that's what the key is. You don't really want to think about if you want to do it, if it's enjoyable. And I think the way the launch school is structured, it's helping with that a lot, because you cannot jump to the next course without finishing one. So you cannot just skip the parts that you find not interesting and just do the part that you find interesting. You kind of have to go through it one by one, right? So you just wake up and you know exactly what you're going to do this day. It's a bunch of exercises and you just have to go through them. No matter if you find them interesting or not, you're just doing them, and that's how you get things done. It's really not much to do with motivation.
That's a good point. Yeah. I guess I didn't think about it that way. Because, oh yeah, if I had to rely on motivation, I would not be where I am. Like, just there was so many times where I just thought everything, just the things that I was learning was boring or it was hard. And obviously I sometimes just don't want to do hard things. I would just rather do anything else but sit down and study. But I have to think about my end goals. Why am I doing this? What is the point of all this? And I just remember the whys of this. And that's what keeps me going, building habits, showing up every day. Even if you show up and you do half an hour and that is truly all you can do, you've showed up and you did something. Changing up my study habits has helped too. Sometimes I write notes, sometimes I make cards, sometimes I make videos. That forces me to do things in different ways to kind of keep it exciting, keeping good habits and being disciplined, but also knowing when to take breaks. For me, taking breaks when you need to, it helps to sustain, for the long term. because there's no way you could go for years and years doing this and just work. Like you have to find time for yourself and for hobbies and for friends and family whenever you can, if it's possible. I mean, I was currently going through that right now with what I'm doing in object-oriented JavaScript. It's just so much information and so confusing, especially coming from Ruby. And so it started to get to me, like just the stress of all the stuff that I'm learning. And then I had time with my family for Christmas, and it was such a good break. And I came back and I was like, okay, I'm ready. Like I can do this. This is 2.5 years now. I've been in launch school. So I've been here for a long time. It feels like forever. And so, yeah, I've had to find lots of different ways to keep motivated and to keep going. So
I think breaks are a crucial part of learning. It's like if you're thinking about exercising at the gym, right? You go to the gym and then you do your workouts, but then the reality is your muscles don't grow when you exercise, then they grow afterwards when you rest. So that's why if you would exercise all the time, you would just over exercise and nothing would happen, right? So you need to give your brain time to rest and time to like kind of put all those puzzles together, what's probably happening when you dream about it, right? It's just like your brain understanding that this is important. If you're doing it for so many hours a day for so many months, it's probably important for your survival somehow, and so that that this is how it works. And there are people obviously who can do it for several hours, like 14 hours a day, no breaks. I could not do it. I have my weekends off most of the time, and I really needed to kind of get the rest, and then being able to go back on Monday, start studying and feel energized and not to burn out, right? Because it takes a while, and you don't want to start working and being already burned out.
Yeah.
Right? No one wants that. You accept it's going to take months or years, right? So you need to have your breaks. You need to meet with your friends in the meantime so that you don't get crazy, right? So that's totally normal.
Yeah, that burnout is such a huge thing that I've dealt with. I had that too after that latest JavaScript interview, because everyone knows I really struggle with interviews. And so I was really trying my hardest to do really well the first time. And I got that conditional pass. And after that, my brain just quit. I couldn't look at launch school stuff. I just couldn't even think about launch school stuff. I had to take a few days, and then I came back and I was like, okay, I'm ready. Like, you just need that sometimes.
Yeah.
So
you do need that, right? And it's interesting. I remember once, I think it was object-oriented JavaScript, when I was just before Christmas, and I was supposed to go and travel during Christmas and New Year. And so that I really, really wanted to rush in the assessment and just to like do it, right? And it didn't go really well. I was very disappointed with myself. But I was thinking like, oh, I have to do it now, because when I go back, then I would forget everything. But the thing is, I came back and I did some reviews, and then I could understand and remember everything, even after almost 2 weeks break. Wow. So that was, and the thing is, if I wouldn't take this assessment before Christmas, and I would take it in January, I would probably pass it with no problems, even with very little studying before that, because you just give your brain time to rest and put together all this knowledge you have there. And so that breaks actually helps you to learn better.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think so. It's just as important as the actual studying part. They both are, at the same level. You need both of them.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so I guess what's the next step for you? I know you're not quite done with the core curriculum yet. You're going to be soon. Are you planning to do capstone? Are you planning to look for a job? Like, what does it look like for you?
So I definitely planning to do capstone. I would love to. And then I'm planning to search for jobs, either in Europe or remote. Yeah, but I'm planning on doing capstone in May. So I still have some time before that. Probably will do some review and maybe learn some interesting stuff, like maybe starting with data structures and algorithm before a little bit, or system design, because I guess it will take a while to learn that. But yeah, hopefully to be done with launch school and capstone and start searching for jobs in September or something like that. Yeah.
That's awesome.
But that's still a few months left, and I know I have still a lot to learn, and I probably will never stop learning. Never ending story.
That's good. Yeah, that's the exciting thing though. Learning is so much fun. There's so much out there to learn. Like there's never a point where you're like, I'm done learning this. It's always evolving and growing. There's so much more coming out. So that's what makes it exciting, I think.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
Okay. Do you have any hobbies that you have on the side? Anything you like to do?
Oh, hobbies. Sure. I love traveling a lot. That I think is my biggest hobby. And while I travel, I also like to do trekkings. That I think my favorite things to do. In my free time, I also, if I live somewhere near the sea, I do some kite surfing. I also like cooking, and yeah, exercising and, you know, meeting friends, obviously. So that would be it. And learning about programming.
That's exciting. That's awesome. Where do you like to travel to? I know you said you're in Europe. You're in Sweden right now. So is it like the Europe area, or is it around the world?
You know, anywhere like I have opportunity to. You know, Asia, I really like traveling in Asia. It's in Southeast Asia, more specifically. It's really beautiful part of the world. I have amazing beaches, specifically in Thailand. But yeah, Europe, right now, I'm not planning any travels outside Europe as much. I think I want to focus on finishing school and maybe finding the job. And afterwards, maybe I will have more time. Hopefully I have more time for traveling than I have now.
That's awesome. Yeah, I was trying to get all my trips and see family out all done before. Hopefully I could start capstone too. So I know I definitely won't have time for that during it. So
no, probably not.
Yeah. But it's okay. I mean, it's necessary, and at some point in your life you have to make time for that kind of thing, like graduate school or capstone. Like, this is what we're working towards. So
Absolutely.
yeah, exciting. Well, thank you so much for sitting here with me and talking about your journey. You have such an interesting story.
This was such a pleasure to be here, and thank you for having me.
Yeah.
So much fun.
Thanks. It was really interesting hearing your perspectives on things. I feel like I learned a lot. So yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me once again. It was a lot of fun.
Thanks. Okay, well, that's it for this one. Thanks to Katarina for being here. I hope you guys liked this video and interview with her. It was really exciting for me, and I hope you guys learned a lot from her. So that's it for this one, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.